I'm going to say this and it may rub a few folks the wrong way, but unfortunately, that's kind of that scarcity mindset stuff that creeps in. And we've all had it at some point or another, but when you truly do look at the world or opportunities as kind of an endless supply, then it allows you to operate freely. Because when you operate on a transactional basis and you don't get anything out of it, then there's expectations that are connected to it. Those expectations aren't met, then there's resentment that forms after that. Welcome to another episode of the Heavy on Brand podcast. And I'm telling folks, I have had a ton of fun and just getting to chop it up with some of my friends in the industry, not only my teammates, but people that I've worked with over the years and people that I've met in my travels and my journey in building this agency. And this interview is special because this individual, not only is she dope and smart in her own way, but we met at a time that was very, very, what can I say? What was that period, Desirae? I was in the state of transition. I'll put it at that. I'll leave it at that. I was in a state of transition. I was leaving one business and trying to navigate what I do with the next thing, whether or not it was going to be an agency or whatever it may be. But it's interesting how certain people, how you cross paths with folks, and how they end up staying in your lives when you don't even intend for them to be, right? But I'm so excited to have Desirae Jones join the show. She is one of the smartest marketing and comms people that I've ever come across. Has built a business, has run, marketing units, has worked in various companies and brands, and is now running her own shop, doing her thing. And so I want to welcome you to the show and say, I'm so glad to have you.
Thank you. I'm so honored to be here. In the first season, I made it.
Yeah, you made it.
Hey, that's what I'm talking about. No, and thank you for the introduction, because I hold you in very high regard. So to hear you saying those words would mean a lot. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, we are one and the same, man. We really are. And we'll get into that story a little bit. But where I want to start with you is, let's talk about your actual journey to getting where you are today. And I know this is not a destination. It's like a stop in the path or a place that you continue to navigate. What made you, help me understand, help our listeners understand, how did you get to the point to where you're running your own shop now?
That's it. First of all, how much time you got? Because when I was looking at my bingo card of life, this wasn't on it. So I would say definitely being here in this space at this time is very divine. I see God in every single thing that has happened. I even had a few full circle moments, which I'll talk about in our conversation. But I had a few full circle moments where I realized, dang, this had to happen in order for me to get to this place. So it's definitely been a journey. It definitely has been something where I've been challenged in multiple ways. But I'll say just where I started versus where I am, it really was happenstance. It was I worked in corporate. I worked for a few major brands, for AT&T, for Comcast, and then I worked in New York for about 6 years with IMAX, and that was kind of my entry into the film industry. And then I'm don't tell nobody, I didn't even watch movies. The most that I did was at home talking into my Comcast remote, hey, play a romantic comedy. That's it. And so I got this gig in the film industry, and I tried to give myself a crash course in the film industry, because I knew of IMAX. Yeah. I knew them as an institutional theater, where you go to the science centers and you go and watch films. So that was kind of I knew that they were doing some films, but I didn't know much about it because I wasn't big into movies. So I had to when I did my interview and everything, I had to give myself a crash course on films, on the type of films that they did. And then they do like Avengers and stuff like that. And I'm like, I'm totally not, totally not into that world. But I mean, it was really divine. It was like, I was in Georgia. I had been in Georgia for a few years. I was like maybe like 3 or 4 years out of school. And I said, man, it's just too chill in the South. Like, I think the South, you come to the South and you think that that's a reflection of life, and it's not. You know what I'm saying? People are kind to you.
Yeah.
People aren't rude. They don't even tell you the truth half the time because they're being so polite, you know?
Right.
And so I was like, if I really want to break into the PR industry, because I had been working more so in like digital marketing and then direct mail marketing. And so I'm like, if I really want to break into PR, which is my degree was actually in, I was like, I gotta go to New York, you know? And so I remember just like applying for the reason why I have to be so specific is because it was like so many little things that happened was like, you know, so I was like applying for jobs in New York. And I remember it's like 11 o'clock at night and I applied for this job at IMAX. And so then when I applied, I started reading up everything on them because I had no clue about the company or whatever. And it was basically when the HR person called me the very next day, the HR person called me and she's like, hey, so you're based in Atlanta. She's like, this position is in New York. You know that, right? And I was like, yeah, I know that. She was like, well, and I'm gonna just tell you right now, we're not offering relocation assistance or reimbursement. We do have a lot of great candidates in New York, but we did see your resume, so we wanted to interview you. But you would have to, not only would we not move you here, you would also have to pay for your transportation back and forth for interviews, right? First of all, I did not have it like that. I was just like, and I was just like, wait, because I prayed about this, so this couldn't be right. Like, you know, so fast forward, I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna just move forward and see what happens, you know. And they ended up paying for relocation. They ended up flying me up there for an interview. I'm giving you the condensed version, right?
Yeah.
They ended up paying for relocation, flying me up there for the interview. But I don't think it was because I was qualified. You know, like in my mind, I was like, so what happened? They didn't have nobody apply because when I tell you, I was like, I mean, I didn't even really have I had some PR experience from like internships and stuff like that, but I didn't even have like an official corporate PR gig before moving out there for that position. And so I remember being like, okay, I felt like, you wait for the other shoe to drop. Like they're going to come back and be like, well, actually, you know, but no, it ended up working out. And so I started to understand like, you know, this is divine order. Like it ain't, even though, you know, I did have a friend of one of my mentors tell me like, girl, they picked you because you were the best candidate. Don't ever believe that they was giving you an opportunity because that's not how it works. Just like, that's not how it works. They picked you because you were the best candidate. And so I had to change the way that I told that story and the way that I told people about me moving and about that experience, because I did, honestly, I really did. I was like, dang, they about to bring me out here for this job, you know? So I'm telling you, when I moved to New York, I have to be transparent. Like I had like a 530 credit score. Like my best friend, she forgot about it. I had to tell her recently, like, do you remember you gave me $2,500 so that I could move to New York? Because even though they did end up reimbursing me, I had to pay for my move. I didn't have no money.
Yeah.
And I barely had credit. And so, listen, I'm a living testimony. So, you know, I went up there. I ended up living in a basement apartment in the Bronx. Like I was thugging it. I was like, because this was the opportunity. You know what I'm saying? This is what, I mean, I didn't even realize it was a big deal until I started telling people in my family, and like the news spread like wildfire. Like everybody's like, oh, she moving to New York. And I was like, oh, this is a big, this is a big deal. So,
yeah.
But that said, you know, I was, I got the job, and I remember it was like a global communications position. I'm born in the Midwest, you know, cultivated in the South. I'm talking to Russians. I'm talking to people in the UK. I remember having calls with them and being like, they're speaking English, but I cannot understand them. It was like, I remember trying to like control my drawl because, I'm just, you live it, when you from Atlanta, you live in Atlanta, you come as your authentic self, right? There's very little code switching be happening in the South. You know what I'm saying? So I remember having to constantly remind myself, this was like before DEI. This was before imposter syndrome and before they started labeling certain things. I remember having, I every week, because I was part of the corporate comms team, every week I sat in a meeting with all of our executives in the company, including our CEO and the comms team, because, we supported, it was corporate communication. So we supported our CEO. And I remember sitting in that meeting every week and taking copious notes because half the time I didn't know what they was talking about. You know what I'm saying? We're a publicly traded company. Everything that we were talking about was stocks and, shorting the stocks and what type of news can we do to manipulate the stock? It was just all kind of things like that. So I remember being like, I literally had to be a student in that first gig. Everything I did when I went home, because I didn't know nobody. When I went home, I was literally digesting my full day and doing research to figure out what the hell was going on. But I say that to say, so that, I had to just tell that as part of the story, because when I tell you, when I'm sitting in this seat right now, just so sure of myself and, I got 15 plus years of marketing and, whatever. I'm like, I had to start there. Like every single day, I'm trudging into the city from the Bronx. And when I met people, they was like, "Oh, you live in the Bronx? Yeah. Oh, interesting." They thought I was in the projects. But listen, that was all I could afford. And I was like, I'm out here, I got to survive. But I feel like that experience, it gave me foundationally every single thing. Like when I think about it now, I'm like, dang, I did this, I did that, and so, that was like my first real break into the industry. Yeah. And it gave me the opportunity to not just work in corporate communications, work in film publicity, handling tempo films, films that was making $100 million the first weekend. I'm part of the team that was promoting those films and part of the team that was actually presenting them to like tastemakers in New York and all of those things. And I feel like a lot of times, and the one thing that I always want people to realize is like, you never really, when you're in it and when you're navigating it and you're trying to figure it out, you don't realize how big of a deal it really is. You know what I'm saying? Like you don't really, and I feel like, especially because you just, you like, I'm just lucky to be here.
Right. At some point they're going to figure me out and kick me out.
Exactly. But I say that to say, so that was like a really big part of my journey, because that was my first, like, I would say uncomfortable experience where I really had to figure out how to fit in, how to navigate the corporate world. I feel like, before I had worked for companies that were so massive that you never got an opportunity to actually do real work, right? When I worked for Comcast, I worked in direct mail marketing, and I got to work on like competitive marketing, which you got to be a little bit creative doing. However, when you wanted materials, like when you wanted to do a direct mail piece, you went into a store and you ordered the collateral. You didn't do any design. You didn't work with a designer. You didn't say the most you could do was like maybe customize the language a bit or something like that, because they're just a massive company. Yeah. So this was one where it was small enough for me to really get my feet wet, but big enough for me to kind of almost drown a little bit if I didn't stay afloat, Sure. And so that experience, when I left after about 6 years, when I left, I felt like I didn't get enough out of it. I felt like I didn't climb the ladder like I saw my peers climbing the ladder. I remember a really distinct conversation that I had with the head of HR, where she was basically like, I was like, my first real promotion y'all gave me was like to an assistant manager. I didn't think this was retail. So I don't know what is an assistant manager. Y'all just made this up. And I remember her telling me like, well, we don't really know if we're a small company. There may not be a time where we need a director of corporate communications and a VP And I said, y'all just promoted my boss, who was a white male, to SVP of communications, from a VP and his boss to chief communications officer. But you're telling me that you don't know that we need a director role. So I need to be happy that I'm getting these small bumps. And I remember when she told me that, I was like, okay,
that was it.
This is not, it's not the same for all of us, and I couldn't put my finger on it. But I remember being like, I feel like I've done a lot of work. Like when I was working with the Russia team, I mean, I'm talking about you on call 24/7. So oftentimes I'm working at night so that the deliverables that they needed for us to host like a media day or do a theater opening was in their inbox when they woke up the next morning. They're like 6 to 8 hours. I can't even remember how far ahead. So it's like navigating that global experience and not ever, like, I hadn't even left the country yet. You know what I'm saying? So in working in a global role, I think that was like, at the time, I was navigating it. So I was figuring it out, but I didn't realize how big of a deal it is and how a lot of people haven't even had that experience. And so fundamentally, that was a big deal.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know any of that. We've known each other for years, and I didn't realize that was kind of the genesis of it.
Yeah.
So what was that turning point? Like when you left, like, help me understand your experience there to what got you to the point of starting your own thing. Like, what happened? Yeah.
So I wanted to stop there because I feel like I kind of gave you a lot.
Okay.
But yeah, so that was when I decided to leave. I had like life happen. I had a child. All of these things happened. I was like, I didn't really feel like I was going to leave, but I felt like I wasn't growing at the company. And so what I had always said was, like, after 5 years, I wanted to reevaluate where I was, because I looked at New York as a springboard, right? Okay, this will spring me forward into my career. Because, I got it out the mud. So it took a minute for me to get, you know what I'm saying? Right. It took a minute for me to get my career started and get where I felt like I was measuring myself against my peers, right? So I felt like I was a little bit behind. So New York to me was a move to be able to springboard me. Like if you come back to the South with experience working corporate PR in New York, it gives you a competitive advantage, right? And so that was my whole plan, was to just leverage that advantage. But at the time, I felt like I had such a poor experience. And I say that because that was just my perspective at the time, right? Like, I didn't understand that was just, maybe I didn't grow as much as I needed to at the company, but I probably never would have gotten where I am right now if I had gotten a VP role, right? Or if I had gotten a director role. I would have stayed there. I would have continued to climb the corporate ladder. And what I don't think I would have ever been able to experience is my superpower.
Yeah.
And finding my superpower. And I think that is where so that is what got me here. So after I left the company, and I took an L, I was just like, oh yeah, I have a child now. I just think moving back to the South would be better. But that wasn't really, I left because I wasn't growing. And I said, why would I live up here in New York? It's expensive. The cost of living is crazy. It doesn't make sense for me. I need to just take my experience and go.
Yeah.
And so I still kept the relationship, but I ended up moving back to Atlanta.
Okay.
And so when I moved back to Atlanta, I remember I worked on, so this is something, we'll talk about this later, but I remember one of the first projects I worked on was with the Capital City Black Film Festival in Austin. So I didn't imagine that I would be starting my own agency. I thought I was just going to freelance for a little bit, just to keep some income flowing. I had my 401k. I was about to cash that out, I was like, so keep some income flowing in. And that project, I ended up working on a project with Capital City Black Film Festival. They were doing like these VIP screenings for Black Panther. And so I remember reaching out to the chief marketing officer at my former job, I already said I had IMAX. And so I remember reaching out to the chief marketing officer and saying, it was like, I was working on this stuff until like 3:00 in the morning. And it was like a light bulb went off, like, hey, you need to holler at them. They tell them to run you a little check. You know what I'm saying? So I remember reaching out to the chief marketing officer and saying, hey, you know, there's a groundswell of support among African Americans for Black Panther. But I don't think that they're going to see it in IMAX, because I know that you guys don't do direct marketing to the African American community. All they do is general marketing, and by default, they advertise to like fanboys and fangirls. But by default, to them, a fanboy and a fangirl is a white teenager that's a gamer, you know, or something like that, you know, or maybe even a 40-year-old white guy. But they didn't see culture in.
It was way different for Black Panther.
Yeah, but even so they didn't even have any clue about culture, right? So they never did any type of diverse marketing whatsoever, and to no fault of their own. It wasn't. They just didn't think that was their core demo, right? Research told them something different. So I reached out to their head of marketing, and I said, you know, there's a groundswell of support for Black Panther. I said, but I don't think that they're going to see the film in IMAX. I said, I would love to talk to your team and see how I can, you know, complement their existing marketing plan with like a multicultural marketing angle. And she immediately was like, oh, sure. And she copied like 10 people on an email. I'm like, hey, we're going to bring Desirae in to talk about, you know, multicultural marketing, you know, to add a little multicultural marketing element to Black Panther. And it was like, I thought that I was ready for her to say no, but I always, like, my mindset has always been, what's the worst that they can do besides say no, right? Always ask. If you have a bright idea, whatever it is, whatever you want, ask. The worst that can happen is they say no, you know? And so she literally brought me in, and I led their first multicultural campaign, which happened to be for Black Panther. And so it ended up being like, at the time they had, I don't know if I can't remember the hashtag, but it was like, and you probably know, it's like a viral thing where they were buying out all of these theaters, and they were sending kids to watch Black Panther because they wanted them to see themselves in the Black superhero. And even though Black Panther wasn't the first Black superhero, it felt like it, right? Because I feel like it was like Blade was considered a Black superhero and something like.
I mean, same universe, but the way that Black Panther was promoted and positioned was like none other that any of us have seen, in my opinion. So yeah, I'm with you. I know exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So I basically was like, there's a hashtag and I remember the guy, his name is Frederick Joseph, and he still is doing like advocacy work today. I feel like that was even a springboard for his career. But he's the one that started the viral moment, which it was hashtag Black Panther something. I can't remember. But anyways, so I was like, why don't we reach out to him and see what he's doing? Because I think at the time, he had partnered with Ellen, and Ellen was buying out a theater for the Boys and Girls Club and something like that. So we ended up meeting I ended up talking to him and seeing what other angles where we could potentially partner. And he ended up helping us to launch like a multi-city screening effort. So he wasn't heavily integrated into the campaign, but like when we made the announcement on social media, he was a part of the announcement. And so basically we did like a multi-city screening effort with the boys, in partnership with the Boys and Girls Club and with Regal. And then, I mean, it was which was crazy. It was very serendipitous because at the time, Cashmere Agency was representing Snoop Dogg, and I think they still do. Dope people. I don't know if you're familiar.
Yeah, I've come across them before. Yeah.
Right. And so Ryan Ford was the guy who was running their shop, and I think he's still at Cashmere today. But he had already reached out to IMAX before we even started this effort. They already reached out to IMAX because Snoop was a huge movie buff.
Yeah.
And so they had already reached out to IMAX in general, like, hey, you know, we'd love to do something, collaborative. Snoop already does like screenings in LA and blah, 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 blah. They didn't even know what to do with it.
Wow.
So this was sitting in somebody's inbox that they just was like, oh yeah, we did get an email from this guy that said he represented Snoop. And I'm like, send me that, you know? So I'm like, what? So it worked out so perfectly because what we did was we did a collaborative effort with Regal, Boys and Girls Club, Cashmere Agency, and Snoop. So we did this multi-city screening series And then we concluded it All-Star Weekend with two screenings at the LA headquarters, the LA IMAX headquarters, hosted by Snoop.
Yeah.
Right. And what was crazy, and so the point, it was, it's really cool. It's great stuff. Like, it was good. But what was the personal part of it was that in this role that I had working for this company, I felt like I never had any real authority and never got to work on any projects that were impactful. Right. I leave the company. They bring me back in to consult. Now I'm running the team that I was a part of. Now they're deferring to me on executing this campaign. I'm leading our PR agency. I'm leading the team that the communications team. I'm liaising with their chief communications officer. I'm giving Snoop's team directive, like doing all of this. But before, I couldn't even get, I was the assistant manager. That was, what I'm saying? Like, and now I'm the expert, and so it was really interesting. So professionally, it was amazing. It was a great opportunity to not just say, so it was a great opportunity to say the company that I worked for 6 years brought me back in as a consultant to lead this campaign. I think it's a great, case study story, right?
Yeah.
But personally, it was like restorative because I didn't feel like I had gotten what I needed out of that opportunity. And I really was questioning, like, dang, was I just not good enough? Was I not this, whatever? So then when they brought me back in and I led the campaign and they were all like, I didn't even know that you could do all of this. It was like, it was restorative. And that is where I say I was able to find my superpower, because then I realized, like, no, actually, it's been in you. You just haven't been given the opportunity to lead.
Yeah.
No one treated you as if you were an expert. They asked you to sit in the box. And then in this capacity, you're outside of the box. And so just to conclude that thought, it made me realize that in-house, you're going to be in a box.
Yeah.
So ultimately, that's the way corporate is structured. It's not structured to where you over here dealing with this, and now you also doing this, and that, right here you might be doing executing a digital strategy, and over here you might be running a media relations campaign. No, it's not. No, you're in digital, you're in PR. They're separate.
Yeah.
And so that was like a little revelation for me.
Yeah. No, this is. Again, I don't know how I did not know this. I knew a little bit about like the Black Panther thing, because that was around the time I feel like we connected. But to your point, I mean, like I spent several years in corporate, and corporate is good for giving you a foundation and understanding, how to do certain things. Like I always find it funny when people who've never worked in corporate and you see like kind of emails they send up. Like I know people specifically. I can tell you never worked in regular job.
He like, no punctuation, no
you just firing it off. So I always laugh when I see stuff like that, and you get to understand like you've never been on the inside at all, which is cool. Like I respect it, but you can never really tap into who you really are and all that you're capable of as long as you're kind of in the confines of like someone else's unit, organization, vision, job role or title, whatever it is. And so it's dope to hear that, you endured all of that and then you were brought back in to really demonstrate all that you're ready to. So I love that. I don't know how I didn't know all that stuff. Well, now I know, and now everybody else knows it.
Right. Now look, this is an exclusive. For me, it felt like, while I think we could have continued the relationship and I probably could have done so. And I did come back and work with them for Black Panther too, in a similar capacity. But it really felt like a mic drop for me. Even though I knew it could have been a long-standing relationship. They could have been one of my, ongoing clients. But for me, it was just, I needed that conclusion, right?
Needed it. Because in many ways, it probably fuels everything else that you do when you walk into situations. You like, oh, I've dealt with this kind of thing before. Like I've earned the right to be confident in this situation.
Exactly.
So, you can rock out in any capacity, anything that's thrown in you.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think now I still haven't mastered talking about the work that I do. Like even this story, like few people know,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? Like few people know that even that was kind of the springboard in my careers as far as like my starting the agency and things. But so I still haven't mastered talking about it and leveraging it in the right way.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I still haven't mastered that, but I will say like that was just that moment and being able to work outside of the confines of like, this is what I want you to do specifically. It really just unlocked something in me that made me feel like, and I'm sure people who work for an agency get a little bit more of that freedom. So they get some of those experiences, but I feel like, it was definitely something where I was like, what can I really not do? You know, like that started the mindset for me. Like, and it's truly how I approach new clients now. And it's so funny because over the past 2 years, there's so many projects that I worked on that it was my very first time doing something like that. Yeah. And so I'm never, while yeah, there's some things where I'm like, that's not really our expertise, but I don't have too many of those conversations. Yeah. Because honestly, if it's a part of it that's not really my expertise, I'm about to call you. Yeah. And you know what I'm saying? I'm going to say, hey, B, we're doing this, but this part, I don't really know. But you know what I'm saying? It's so.
It's just like that.
Yeah.
So when all that was happening, like, help me understand timeline of when you and I met, right? Because I'll never forget the first time we met, we were sitting at the gathering spot. And this is when they had one of the tables. It's been a while since I've been up in there, but they had the tables on like the left side, depending on how you're looking at it, the left or right side of the bar. And it was just a table and your stuff was there. And I don't even think you were sitting down. You were off doing something else. And I was like, well, it seems to be over. I'm just going to sit down here because I wanted to have something to eat. Mm-hmm. And you came over and I don't think we said anything to each other initially, but then for whatever reason, we just started chopping it up.
Right.
And then it turned into like all the stuff that you were telling me about, like the film festival.
So no shade on the gathering spot. I'm still a member after, like, to this day, just out of love. But that was when it used to be magical like that. Like, it's not, that energy is not there no more. And I mean, I still love them. But like I feel like the way that we met was the way that it was designed to happen there. Like that was what made it so cool, because I feel like because it was a members only club, nobody had airs. Everybody came in like, hey, you never know who you can meet. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so that first year of me being a member I've met so many people that I've collaborated with that are friends now, like, you know, evolved into a friendship and things like that. But I think that's exactly what happened. We sat down beside each other and I think all of a sudden he was like, hey,
yeah,
how you doing?
You working on?
Heck, I'm Brian. I'm like, all right, what's up, Brian? You know, and I don't know if it was like we were on calls and maybe you heard something, but I know it was like we immediately kind of was like, he was like, oh, you know, I'm in a transition phase. You kind of told me, I don't know if you told me day one. I feel like it was probably a little bit after because we immediately found a collaboration point. I feel like in that first meeting, you was telling me something that you was working on. You was working with Q on, was it like a mini doc?
Yeah, it was at the time. Yep.
Yeah. And so you was working with Q and y'all had just did this mini doc. And I thought it was so interesting. I'm like, well, I'm programming a film festival. So it's so legit. So the Black Panther thing happened in February. So if you're talking about a timeline, right? Mm-hmm. The Black Panther thing happened in February. I remember their release was in February because I think it was during Black History Month. Mm-hmm. The film festival was in September. I think we met in the summertime.
All time. That makes
sense. Yeah. And so
that makes sense.
Right. So when I started working with the film festival, the plan was for me to handle PR marketing and then also which eventually evolved into PR marketing and programming.
Sure.
So when I met you, I was just in like the programming. I had just gotten the executive director to open up the budget a little bit so he could pay me to do the programming. Yeah. And so when I met you, I was like, oh, this is perfect. Let's let's connect the dots and make it make sense. And you was down.
I was down. Yeah. I didn't have anything to lose really at that point. Mm-hmm. Because I was going from the agency that I was with to trying to figure out the next thing. And I think at the time, if September is a timeline, then I would have just been like settling with the idea of starting another agency. And so there's a whole story and a whole episode connected to that. But I was down. Like, you just seemed super cool. And I was like, oh, we get to travel. Like, we get to go to Austin and kind of showcase this thing. And not that I really even expected anything out of it. It was just an opportunity to go meet more people and continue to build relationships. So I think, out of that, you and I got tighter, and then me and Amani got tighter.
Right.
Because you were curating that particular panel, and it was around like sports films and documentaries or whatever it may be.
Right.
And he was on the panel with me and Q. And we all just hit it off, man, and collaborated on a few other things after that.
Right.
So it's just crazy how things work. Just from happenstance.
But Issa Rae said, she used to always say this, is like everybody goes to an event, or they go to, or something like that, and they're always trying to talk to the person who's on the stage.
Mm-hmm.
And I always noticed that. Like, I mean, it's just so bizarre. Like, I always thought it was cringe to like go to an event and you standing in line to talk to the person that just got finished speaking. I'm not saying I wouldn't talk to them, but I'm like, it's so many other people in the room.
So many.
Are we all assuming that no one in this room has value except the people who are on the stage? And then, so I feel like that was one of those situations where we were networking across. Like, it was like network with the person who's right next to you, as opposed to, not to say you don't reach for the person who has more connections or whatever, but collaborating with someone that is on the kind of on a similar level, similar wavelength. You never know what can come of that. And I feel like that was a perfect example. And I think it was, first of all, I got a reminder on my phone the other day of a picture of you and Q in front of the Step and Repeat at the film festival. I remember because Q had on some flowery pants or something.
Well, he did have on that suit. You know what? I'm gonna tell the editors on this video to like find that picture, and
I will send it to you. We need to drop it, insert it right here. But yeah, so I think that the one thing that I feel like was really special about that is everything was like, can I just tell you a quick bit about like that whole moment or whatever? So What was really special about that is like, I got this opportunity to work with this film festival in Austin. Like, they had been running the film festival for a couple years. And I was trying to pick the brain of the executive director of like, what is, what connections do you have that we could potentially, leverage or whatever. And he's just like, well, Julius Tenen, who was Viola Davis's husband, he is from Austin. And so he's come to our festival before. And so he kind of ran all his kind of industry connections. And they were very like, he had some decent connections, but he just I don't think he knew how to connect the dots.
Okay.
And I think that was what I was able to do that year that I think really helped us to make everything make sense, which connecting the dots happened with you and Amani. Like, all of those things were just like, nobody knew that we'd be able to pull it off. But the one thing, okay, so he said he had a relationship with Julius Tenen, and Julius always asks how he can support, but he never knows what to ask for besides like maybe a donation. Can you guys send us a video, whatever? So Viola Davis had just launched this docuseries. And the docuseries, it's like a strange connected event. The docuseries feature was talking about basically like people who were incarcerated, and they felt like it was an injustice, right? So she told two stories. One of them was of this guy, whose name was also Julius. His name is Julius Jones from Oklahoma City. Now it's gotten like, broad attention, but at the time, no one knew about it. Yeah. I went to high school with him.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
So immediately, this is all happening like the earlier, like the day before. Yeah. I'm telling him like, you need programming. That's what's going to make people come to your film festival.
Sure.
He told me he had the relationship with Viola's husband. So I'm on watching TV. I see a preview of Viola doing a promo for this series. And she was talking about Julius's story. And I was like, wait, Oklahoma is right by Texas. I was like, we need to bring down. I knew Julius's best friend. He's like a friend of my family. Like it was crazy. So I'm like, we need to bring them down and have Julius, because they were him and Viola were executive producing the docuseries. I'm like, let's bring everybody down to talk about the docuseries and to talk about the importance of using, film and television to amplify different, and I'm literally doing this type of stuff today, but to use film and television to amplify these types of stories, right? So we ended up bringing them down, and Amani was the director of that docuseries.
Okay.
So
that's right.
So Amani came down there for that, but then I knew that he had a sports background because I think he had did a documentary, a sports documentary prior to that.
Done. Was it the Benji 30?
Yeah.
It was a 30 for 30. He had done ESPN 30 for 30. I want to make sure I get it right. But yes, he had done 30 for 30s.
Yeah.
And he had done stuff with like HBO Sports. So he did a lot of work.
Exactly. And so that was how I was like, okay, so Amani got a sports background. Let me have him be on the panel, like, be on the panel with y'all. And so everything really, when I tell you everything like worked out in just this really divine way. Yeah. And so I think just to the point is like, that was the start of our relationship that immediately, we immediately was locked in after that,
Yeah. 1,000%. Yeah. We just became friends and just.
Oh, and then wait, but don't forget, you was on the marketing on the shoestring budget panel with Didi and John.
Oh yeah, and I got cool with that.
Yeah. Like, hey, since we got you, we about to use you in multiple different.
Hey, sign me up. I remember that now because they were doing a lot of stuff, or maybe even still. I think I follow both of them. Still, hey.
Yep, they have a podcast called Black on the Scene.
Yes.
And they cover film industry stuff.
Yep. Super cool. That's what's up, man. I love hearing stuff like that, how things just come full circle. But you just never know, man. You just never know. Like, and again, this is why I think it's so important for us to not be afraid to just be who we are. Because we connect with people differently. And sometimes we can overlook people or underestimate people and not think that they got the juice or whatever it may be. But in this situation, like, you are a powerhouse and people don't even realize it, because one of the more powerful and impactful things that I think people can become or do, especially when you're an entrepreneur, you know how to connect the dots for people, you can make a lot of money. Huge difference in many ways. And people will always remember the person who connected them to the new opportunity or the next whatever. And the one thing I love about you too is you always just do it off the muscle, just off the strength. It's like, I'm going to connect you to this person. I don't necessarily need anything out of it. If it makes sense for me to be a part of it, cool. But whatever you do, you do.
Brian, do you know that mindset was really me being naive? But I haven't abandoned it. Now it's like I'm just more conscious and aware of it. Yeah. Because when I tell you other people don't operate like that.
No, a lot of people don't operate that way.
And I had somebody that was like, I was real close with, and had been like, the same way that I'm like, oh, hey, B, let me introduce you to so-and-so, and let me, literally I make the connection and walk away. I never think it never even dawned on me. I'm like, well, if B get a bag, he needs to break me. Never dawned on me, because the way I look at it is, and it's definitely not transactional, right? Yeah. It's really on the strength of like, oh, I know this person, let me connect you because y'all might do good business together. So never with no expectation. And there's nothing wrong with breaking somebody off if you whatever, but that's not how I operated, right? Like, that was just like, hey, I'm connecting people, and I do it for myself and my business, and I'm going to always put other people on. And so it was like a rude awakening for me when other people was like, hey, I put you on, what's up? I was like, oh, okay.
I'm going to say this, and it may rub a few folks the wrong way, but unfortunately, that's kind of that scarcity mindset stuff that creeps in. And we've all had it at some point or another, but when you truly do look at the world or opportunities as kind of an endless supply, then it allows you to operate freely. Because when you operate on a transactional basis and you don't get anything out of it, then there's expectations that are connected to it. Mm-hmm. Those expectations aren't met, then there's resentment that forms after that, right? And so I'm a firm believer in just serve, just give, like, and don't expect anything in return, because one, you need to keep your peace of mind and your sanity around it. But then two, like the way the universe works, the way life works, that stuff comes back around. And you may not be a 1-for-1 thing. It could be 3, 4, 5 stops or degrees of separation. And then, but I just truly believe that's how a lot of things function. Now, you still got to show up and do the work and be proactive about things. But it's, again, one of the things that I've always appreciated about you is that you operate that way. You do. And I think it shows in how successful you are. It shows in the type of clients and the work that you do. It shows in the team that you're able to maintain. All that stuff matters, man. It really does. It really does. So just kudos.
Listen, I appreciate it, but it's also what you like. I definitely believe that, and not expect, but I believe that first, if I put you on something, I'm vouching for you because you're solid. Right. And I want to connect somebody else I know with somebody that's solid. Right. So like that's the main reason why I'm going to connect people in the first place. Yeah. But secondarily, we on this journey now. Like I said, with the festival, we was locked in. We're on this journey. Now we both, in any bag I get to that I have the opportunity to get you a bag, I'm going to keep you top of mind. We on this journey together. And it's not necessarily like, oh, Brian brought me a bag, so I got to bring him one, which is good too, right?
Yeah.
But it's also just like, hey, there's always going to be opportunities that present themselves where I'm going to need someone that I can trust, that I can collaborate with. Yeah. That's the most important thing. I mean, yes, doing good work, but like, I trust you. I think that if I bring you in, you're going to give me solid counsel. You're not going to do nothing crazy. Like, I'm be able to trust you completely. Hey, this is how much this project is worth. Yeah. This how we going to split it. You know what I'm saying? Full transparency and things like that. Like, that's very important to me, because ultimately that's who I want to surround myself with, people that do good business and that are looking out for each other at every turn. And it's not all about like, I'm trying to eat off your plate. Yeah. It just because I helped you to get to it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But
no, I love that. So the last thought or question I have for you, and I feel like we'll have to do a part 2 of this.
Oh, I didn't even realize. First of all, I
totally just looked at the time. Let's go.
I ate this whole time. Oh,
shot on you. It did exactly what I wanted you to do. Yeah. So I love every bit of it. So a lot of the work you do today is, in many cases, like, impact led. It's focused in certain areas from a purpose standpoint. That's I know a lot of that, because a lot of the work that we've done as an agency has been with purpose-driven brands too. Talk to us about, I guess, go into a little bit more detail around the nature of that work that you're doing, because I want people to understand holistically. But then also, to close us out, I want you to also just kind of share what people can find you too, because we're like, we are handing off opportunities and we can create some awareness around, the people that we're bringing on the show. So what you got?
No. So I'll say definitely over the past 2 years, we realized that the work that we do, especially if you're doing multicultural, oftentimes when I was approaching a project, if we had a client who wanted to reach a multicultural audience, I was always trying to figure out how we could leverage the client's desire to reach this audience, but also use their dollars to benefit the community that they were trying to reach, right? Like, it was never just like, oh, you need to just talk this way and you need to do. I'm like, what, how much money you got?
Yeah.
This organization is doing good work. What you got to do is come in and engage from a community perspective. And that is how people will start to recognize that you are showing up in places that benefit them, right? Places that they are safe spaces, places that align with their community. They recognize that, like, before Essence was the Essence that it is now, women recognize when brands showed up in those spaces that they had created for themselves, right?
Yeah.
And so oftentimes that's what we were encouraging clients to do. Like, hey, there's a nonprofit organization that is addressing domestic violence that reaches the community that, that you're trying to reach.
Yeah.
Why not work with this particular nonprofit and help them to fund their outreach initiatives or something like that? So I realized that when we were working doing multicultural, even though it was consumer, we were always trying to find like a community, a way to engage community in those efforts, right? And so as the agency started to evolve, and as just the needs of our clients started to evolve, I realized personally, and that I'm not, and we talked about this offline. I'm not necessarily here to win awards in marketing, right? I might not be like the first person you think of when you think about like a red carpet, a PR event or knowing celebrities and stuff like that. I'm like, I'm doing hard work. That's what drives me. That's what wakes me up in the morning and makes me excited, right? Like when I realized that like, oh man, this particular, we're working on this project that's benefiting this particular group. And like, I'm like, that's what excites me.
Yeah.
And so I realized like I have to figure out a way to encourage myself to show up at the highest level every time. And I realize whenever we're doing purpose-driven work, whenever we're doing social impact work, whenever we are doing something that I know the bottom line is not the only thing that matters, that's what excites me. And so not only do I need to convince our clients that doing these types of things can improve their bottom line, right? I also have to identify the clients that are courageous enough to do so, and I think what you start to realize is that not every client that's not every client. You know what I'm saying? Not everyone is trying to, and some people are earnest in their approach, but they need an agency that understands the communities that they're trying to reach or understands the objectives that they're trying to align with, to say, hey, this is how you should show up, right? And so I started to think, you know what, now I want to start intentionally doing more social impact work. And another thing that really just dawned on me one day was like, so if we are going to transition as an agency to doing social impact work, what is our responsibility as it relates to impact, right? And so I think last year, 2023, actually, we got to work on a project, like a documentary for Amazon, and we got to do a social impact campaign for this documentary. This was another conversation about like me doing stuff that I didn't necessarily know how to do, but I was like, we're going to make it happen.
Yeah.
So, we ended up recording and building a course around the history of Black land dispossession, because we felt like there was like a knowledge gap, especially for younger people, to understand like how we got here, right? And how Black people were constantly disproportionately impacted by all of these things, right? And it all leads back to that 40 acres and a mule. It all leads back to that promise not being fulfilled. And maybe there still would have been other issues, but we could trace the history from that moment to today, and you could see the trickle effect of how that impacted our community and the economics in our community. And so we built an entire course to help to educate people in that we promoted in partnership with the documentary, right? And so that is another thing where I was like, man, it was like intoxicating just doing it, and just being able to work with a major brand, but them trusting us to be able to do that type of thing. And I'm like, I want to do it again and again and again. But as an agency, when they're done with that film, when they're no longer promoting it, they're no longer worried about getting views, companies move on, right? Not every company is like, this is our strategic initiative that aligns with our corporate social responsibility program or whatever. And those companies exist, but not always. So I'm like, the onus is on us as an agency to leverage the foundation that we built in this area and build upon it. So now we got to find who else want to do this type of work, right? Now we got to find other clients who are interested in maybe breaking into this space or interested in addressing some of these social issues. And we say, well, we already foundationally have this.
Yeah.
Why don't we leverage the foundation that we built in this area to be able to kick off another initiative for another client, right? And so I think that's something that I feel like I've challenged us to do is to build upon the work that we've done for clients, even in the absence of their dollars, right? Like, don't just leave it. If we started something with HBCUs and educating them on the history of Black land dispossession, what more could we do, and what more opportunities could we bring to those same students that are now engaged and they want to be activists and they want to do this? Yeah. Now we're saying, hey, we already got these students that are ready. They're ready to activate. Why don't we bring you over here and leverage what you're trying to do to benefit these students and give them an opportunity to really be able to get engaged and understand how to make an impact. And so that's kind of what we're trying to do as an agency. Like, not everything we do is going to be impact driven, but we are trying to attract and go after clients that are interested in doing work with where heart is at the center.
Man, I love that. I'm gonna cut that up and want to use it on our channels, but make sure you got it as well, because that's a dope commercial. Like, we explain to people like what you all do. So yeah, we got a lot to talk about.
All right, we're gonna have to do a part 2.
Yeah. But even outside of that, like, there's certain things I think are more immediate.
Okay.
That we just need to work through, but that's a conversation offline. But D, I appreciate you. Where can people find you?
So my agency is Desirae Jones Co. It's Desirae, Desirae Jones Co.com. The same on social media, just Desirae Jones Co. But yeah, that's where you can find us. And B, I'm excited. This is like, the energy was high,
Yes, I told you I was gonna get it up. Like, I told you I was gonna change the energy.
Right, yeah.
I came in a little low, but I was like, I'm gonna get there. But
first of all, I planned on asking you some questions, and I was just you pulled it all out of me.
Oh no, I wanted to, but this has been dope. We definitely got to do a part 2. Again, thank you for just taking the time to just chat. And I just respect you so much on so many different levels. It's not easy doing what you do, and to navigate life is new, and all the things, clients and your team, it's not for the faint of heart, but you seem to do it with so much grace. And I know it ain't easy. I know it ain't always smooth, but you're meant for this. You really. And
thank you.
Just honored that I've had an ability to see you operate up close and personal in so many different ways, and can honestly and truthfully say that, we've become friends. It's just always dope to see like the people that kind of come in together in different ways. You grind up, and you're on the come up, and we're still on the come up, right? You've still got a lot that we need to do.
Right.
But knowing how far we both have come, and where we are today, and having a sense for where things are headed, I'm just excited for you. I really am. And I'm just, again, glad you took a moment out of your day to just chat with us.
Oh, well, first of all, I'm honored, because listen, when you say all of those nice things, likewise, my brother, but I tell you, the bar is high. Like, you really showed me like, hey, that's what we need to shoot for. When I got my website redesigned, I was like, Carbon Thread Agency. You see that? I like that. You see that bar? I want mine to look like that. Like, I'm telling you, like, B, I think we are very similar in just like we do the work, and we don't get caught up in all the other things, but you are setting a wonderful example. I love what you're doing. You've always operated in excellence. And you always have kind of, you just breeze through it. I know it's challenging. We both know we out here thugging it out sometimes, but you inspire people. And that's why you got a team that you always working with, the people that, the people that I'm like, man, I wish I could afford them. They on your team. Like,
I appreciate you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I receive that.
Yeah.
Well, again, D, thank you. Hopefully everyone enjoyed this episode, this conversation. I'm sure y'all got a lot out of it. We're going to definitely do a part 2. In the meantime, y'all take it easy and tune in for the next episode. See you soon. If you enjoyed this episode of the Heavy on Brand podcast, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification button. And if you need more information on all things marketing and branding, check us out at thecarbonthread.com. Until next time, Stay heady.